You know what? Aliens fascinate me. I love the idea of a good guy from outer space who can be befriended, which probably comes from E.T. being a core memory for me. But more often than not, the aliens we see on screen are dreadful, and I mean that in a good way. They're unsettling and induce paranoia, often appearing with parasitic or shapeshifting abilities, or grotesque forms that can be hard to look at when acid spits out of their mouth. But that's what we enjoy on this channel. So this video is about 15 such alien creatures across multiple films that, in my opinion, have been very unsettling or created some of the most disturbing visual sequences. With that, let's begin. The Thing, 1982. We're starting with the 1982 film The Thing, which introduces us to the very unsettling Thing. It's a John Carpenter classic and is often regarded as a blueprint for unsettling creatures, at least within the mainstream. The basic premise follows 12 men stationed in Antarctica for research. And by fate's design, what they encounter is anything but majestic emperor penguins. Instead, they have to deal with a parasitic shape-shifting alien that can assimilate living beings and replicate them perfectly. This creature, known as the titular Thing, is highly invasive, and with its replication of the workers, the story follows a sense of intense doom and paranoia with respect to which one of them is harboring the Thing. The film adapts John W. Campbell's novella, Who Goes There? The Thing is a highly hostile extraterrestrial creature, unearthed by the research team after it spent 100,000 years frozen and buried in the snow. As a shape-shifting entity, its body morphing goes beyond assuming the form of an earthly being, allowing it to weaponize its body into offensive teeth, tentacles, and so on. We remain unaware of its original appearance, since it could have assimilated into just about any life form during the years it spent in stasis on Earth. The alien has immense strength and stamina. It can also reconstitute its body after taking damage, showing off nigh invulnerability, kind of like a pashmina shawl on steroids. Overall, it's invulnerable to conventional attack methods, barring fire. Other offenses that work on it are molecular acids that can destroy it on a cellular level. Its ability to show off additional faces at once while assimilating into the next victim is probably the most unusual and icky feature, more so than the multiple appendages or the insect-like limbs. Despite its absolute mastery over shapeshifting, it cannot mimic any non-living material. Among its prey, however, the living being cannot have been dead for long. It must be alive or freshly dead. If the Thing is cut off or decapitated, it can operate on its own, with both halves turning into two separate creatures. The half-formed flesh masses are particularly disturbing. Overall, the film is notorious for its body horror, terrifying transformations, and successfully instills a deep sense of paranoia where none of the characters can trust the other. Xenomorph XX121, Alien 1979. I mean, we can't really pull off a list like this without this one, can we? Xenomorphs are parasitic alien creatures from the film series Alien. Its name is a straight giveaway of what it does, as the term xeno refers to something strange or foreign in Greek, and morph means form or shape. As such, a xenomorph directly translates to alien form if we try to be colloquial with the English. The Alien film series uses the term for just about any unknown alien life form rather than a particular species, as they do with the Demogorgons in Stranger Things. Over time, fans have come to associate the term xenomorph with the famous monster featuring a long-headed black exoskeleton and acidic blood. Xenomorphs are an endoparasitoid alien species, meaning they live off a host and ultimately cause its death. They are eusocial creatures, much like ants or wasps, as a fertile queen breeds a caste of workers, warriors, and other specialist strains of species. These creatures are predatory and primal. They have no higher goal like humanity. They are geared toward the continuation of their kind by hook or by crook. And with that comes an intrinsic need to eliminate any other life form that poses a threat to their existence. Their entire life cycle revolves around violating a living host. It starts with a traumatic implantation of the larvae inside a host, a facehugger. This is closely followed by the chestburster larvae erupting from the host body after the incubation period. The xenomorph then matures into an adult within mere hours and seeks out new hosts to continue the process. The chestburster stage is more akin to a cancerous growth than an implanted fetus. At this stage, the chestburster is still vulnerable and relies on the host-based life cycle that began with the facehugger implanting it. The violent eruption of the chestburster kills the host. This stage is followed by adulthood, with the queen the absolute peak, which will be a separate entry. Overall, its appearance, gruesome life cycle, acid spit, insect-like reproduction, and inner jaws make it one of the most unsettling and iconic alien creatures in media. The Alien Beings, Fire in the Sky, 1993. The 1993 Robert Lieberman horror drama Fire in the Sky introduced us to one of the most terrifying alien abduction sequences ever. We come face to face with a bunch of very nonchalant, pale, distorted aliens whose inhuman and cold behavior is shocking to witness. I'd say the best way to describe the experience from a viewer's perspective is that it's a very uneasy watch. The premise is as follows. A bunch of loggers witness a UFO somewhere in northern Arizona, and one of their crew members, Travis Walton, subsequently disappears. He's found 5 days later, completely juiced out and dehydrated, and claims that he has been abducted by aliens. And it's his recollection of the events taking place following his abduction that gives Fire in the Sky a spot in this list. Walton, when found, is shown to be severely traumatized. Following a hospitalization and a subsequent welcome home party, a mental breakdown causes Walton to experience a flashback rehashing the events of his abduction. The sequence has him awaking inside a slimy cocoon. As he breaks out of the membrane, he finds himself within a cylindrical enclosure with similar cocoons lining its walls. He struggles in the low-gravity environment and is shocked to find the decomposing remains of a human when he unknowingly breaches a cocoon. The unsettling aliens get him and bring him to an examination chamber while Walton struggles to free himself, but he's held down at the center and stripped naked. An elastic material is wrapped around him to restrain him while he screams. At the same time, the aliens perform traumatizing experiments on him, such as forcing substances and tubes into his mouth, stabbing devices into his neck, locking his jaw open, and so on. They even probe overhead equipment into his eye, which many fans consider the most terrifying scene. But I personally feel like the moments in the cocoon were the most bothersome, since human remains were always around him. He could have ended up the same way had he not broken out of his cocoon. And yet, breaking out led to him experiencing the most traumatizing moments of his life. The aliens treated him as disposable material for what seems to be research, and the manner was worse than how a human would research an insect. Which is insane if you think about it, because humans have committed many inhumane experiments on animals of all sorts. Death Angels, A Quiet Place, 2018. What do you do when you're blind? You overcompensate with your heightened hearing. And what happens when you're an extraterrestrial predator who can't see? You navigate the world through your superior hearing abilities to the point that if someone even drops a pin, you can peel your head open and unleash yourself as you assume full throttle. Long story short, make a sound and it's game over, which is what happens in the John Krasinski-directed horror film known as A Quiet Place, as it brings us face to face with the Death Angels, also known as the Listeners. These beings are sound-hunting predators that have crashed on Earth, arriving via a meteor from outer space. Much like the Xenomorphs, they don't have a higher goal as a species. They only have the base instinct to kill anyone who makes even the slightest sound. To make matters worse, they possess near indestructible armor, blinding speed, and have overall managed the feat of eliminating a sizable portion of humanity in the film, causing societal collapse. Their lack of vision seemingly comes from originating on a lightless planet where they adapted to harsh conditions and very high gravity. As a result, they acquired their armor, greater strength, and advanced echolocation. Their speed on Earth comes from adapting to the high gravity of their home planet, giving them a terrain advantage when operating under weaker gravity than they're used to. Their armor also withstands conventional human weapons. However, drowning them is one way to take them down, since their high-density bodies can't swim. If that wasn't enough, they have jaws filled with sharp teeth, while their armor can unfold like hellish cabbages. But despite all these advantages, their delicate ears are also their weakness. Conventional weapons can therefore damage their ears, while their hyperhearing makes them overly sensitive to sound-based attacks. But overall, they operate from pure instinct and viciousness, making them one of the most fearsome alien species in the media. The alien parasite, Long One, Slither, 2006. The 2006 horror comedy known as Slither makes the concept of a conscious disease a thing. Directed by James Gunn, the premise revolves around the residents of a small town in South Carolina that falls victim to a malicious alien parasite invading them. Unlike most of the former entries, however, the alien parasite in Slither is sentient. It has traveled across the universe to search for life forms that it can infect, devour, and subsequently kill. As such, it's carried out this heinous act across every planet that has life, spreading and consuming everyone until there remains nothing, and then moving on to another planet. It's implied that the parasite arrives on planets via meteors, and it was just a matter of time for it to touch down on Earth. The Long One appears out of a gelatinous sac that looks like a slimy large maggot. When discovered, it makes a needle-shaped protrusion into the victim's torso and burrows through its body and into the brain to fuse with him and assume control. This happened to Grant, and his habits started to change. He secretly starts killing wild animals, cattle, and pets. He assaults a woman with added physical help from his mutated proboscis, turning her into a womb, force-feeding her raw meat, and he loses whatever remains of his humanity. In keeping with the body horror, his physical appearance becomes increasingly distorted over time, developing slimy growths all over his body and appendages extending from his torso. He ultimately transforms into a tentacled amorphous blob. At the same time, the woman he assaulted, Brenda, is used as a womb to harbor thousands of parasitic slugs, causing her body to swell to inhuman proportions. She ultimately explodes, releasing the slugs while her own body is torn apart. These slugs born from Grant go around town, infecting people and continuing the cycle. Once the slugs begin to take over people, we see the creation of a hive mind, or a collective consciousness, among those infected by the parasites, while the humans turn into zombified slaves. Grant incorporates multiple human bodies into his biomass, becoming more grotesque over time. Overall, it's an excellent example of body horror, and probably one of the most visually disgusting alien creatures. The Crawler, Annihilation, 2018. Annihilation is a sci-fi cosmic horror film by Alex Garland and loosely adapts Jeff Vandermeer's novel. Similar to the other entries, the premise follows a group of scientists. This time, they enter a quarantine zone known as the Shimmer, where plants and animals mutate in the presence of a mysterious alien. The film is most renowned for its Lovecraftian nature, but this one has less body horror. The protagonist is a biologist who encounters a strange humanoid creature. In true Lovecraftian fashion, the creature cannot be described. It's simply too indescribable in a way that it can't be comprehended. Since it had been mutating other life forms, what we see vaguely gives the feeling that it's a jumbled mess of plants, animals, and humans. Protagonist Lena finds herself in front of this metallic humanoid who imitates every move she makes, almost like a mirror. One could say that the Shimmer transforms what it touches in the same way that a prism refracts light. The plants take on humanoid shades, seemingly due to the Shimmer's distortion of everything within its boundaries, which also includes the DNA of the biologists. Fingerprints change, paranoia takes over, and people are killed. You have terrifying moments, such as the emulation of another's voice being used as a cry for help, which is ultimately nothing but a trap. One begins to lose a sense of reality, but the real entity has no clear face, or goal for that matter. It simply does what it does for an incomprehensible reason. The Mimics, Edge of Tomorrow, 2014. On the topic of alien entities who mimic you, we have The Mimics from the 2014 military sci-fi film by Doug Liman. Edge of Tomorrow. It loosely adapts Hiroshi Sakurazaka's Japanese light novel All You Need Is Kill. The film is set in a future where Europe has been occupied by a race of aliens known as the Mimics. As such, the protagonist is forced to join a landing operation against them. Except the said operation captures him in a time loop while he's left trying to figure out how to defeat the Mimics. The Mimics have one goal: to destroy humanity. In what many critics call a Groundhog Day scenario, Major Bill Cage, played by Tom Cruise, relives the day of his being killed on the man versus alien battlefield over and over again. The ability to loop time is connected to the Mimic's alpha blood, and Cage acquires it after killing an alpha and being covered in its blood. But behind everything is an alien hive mind known as the Omega, the very brains behind the operation. The Omega can reset time when an alpha carrying its connection is killed, allowing the Mimics to effectively redo the battle with the knowledge of what happened. But Cage acquired this ability when an alpha captured him in its ghastly blue goo. But he has to die every day and reboot time until the Omega is destroyed. This is a tough battle, as the Mimics are generously tentacled, extremely fast and agile, highly capable of ambushing, and operate as a hive mind. They look like living knots of blades and muscle and exist in the millions. They're divided into 3 castes. Roughly, that is, the drones, alphas, and omegas. The drones are the innumerable foot soldiers who lack any chronokinetic ability. But on rare occasions, you come across an alpha who can control time, as they operate as the nervous system of the hive mind and trigger the omega's response of resetting time when they're killed. But they retain the necessary memory while the rest do not, and as such acquire information and the intelligence for a more precise next round. As such, they are devious and difficult extraterrestrial enemies that Cage has to die over and over again to defeat. The Wraith, Stargate Atlantis, 2004 to 2009. Stargate Atlantis introduced us to a humanoid alien species known as the Wraith. Another example of a hive-based species, the Wraith operate in the Pegasus galaxy and drain the life force of other humanoid beings using specialized hand organs known as suckers, which jut out of their right palms. In fact, the Wraith need to do this for their nourishment and sustenance. It doesn't have to be for an evil cause, but this also makes them top predators, causing other worlds to live in fear of them, while the Wraiths themselves return periodically to cull their human livestock. Once full, they go into hibernation. When a Wraith feeds on a victim, the victim ages rapidly while the Wraith itself becomes stronger and younger. Within the food pyramid, humans are to them what livestock is to us. The gap is astounding. The Wraith evolved from the Iratus bug, which acquired human characteristics by feeding on humans. This created the Wraith, who then stole a weapon meant to cull them in case a contingency was needed, and this became the beginning of the end. They're one of the most unsettling alien creatures, precisely because of the visuals involved in their feeding. It's the way they suck out the life force while the other person ages at the expense of the Wraith gaining youth and strength that throws me off the most. The Brain Bug, Starship Troopers, 1997. The Brain Bug from Starship Troopers, the sci-fi action film directed by Paul Verhoeven, is another classic for a list on unsettling aliens and for films adapting sci-fi novels. It's set in the 23rd century and follows teenager Johnny Rico, who serves in the military of an Earth-based world government and, as such, finds himself and his comrades in the midst of an interstellar war against an alien species known as the Arachnids. Within the colony structure of the Arachnids exists a distinct species known as the Brain Bugs, who play the role of command and control in the armies. They can extract brains, especially when the victim is human, and gain access to all the knowledge and potentially the memories within them. Not a very good opponent to have. The creatures are soft-bodied, and as such, use a proboscis to gain access to human brains. The ensuing intelligence is acquired by consuming the neurological tissue. It's possible that the brain bug has telepathic abilities and shares a symbiotic dynamic with the rest of the colony. But this also means that if the main bug dies, so does the entire colony. However, it's the job of the workers and the warriors of the colony to ensure the survival of the brain bug. as it possesses no functional abilities in battle. Their legs are hardly useful, their bodies are bloated, and they're mostly just a nervous system. Overall, the Arachnids are a very hostile species who, under the guidance of the brain bug, have repeatedly subjugated multiple planets across the galaxy, allowing them to directly oppose the United Citizen Federation. You know, I always felt that this was a media-centric replication of the feud between the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union, with the latter being the inspiration for the Arachnids. The Queen Alien. Aliens 1986. We've already discussed Xenomorphs, but I did mention I'd get back to the Queen in a separate entry. So here I am, talking about one of the large forms of the species that serves as the leader of the hive and the mother. The Queen is vastly different from the other castes, as it possesses intelligence and differs greatly in appearance. Unlike the smooth, glassy, dome-like heads we're used to, the skull of the Queen flares at the back, almost as if leather wings belonged to a Dargothoth that was evolving out of needing wings, if that makes sense. It also has a pair of arms on its chest. Either way, they're one of the largest and the strongest across the Xenomorph castes. It serves as the leader of the Xenomorph hive as their most intelligent Xenomorph and can lay eggs to continue the species. They tend to the workers for the most part and refrain from participating in battle. But if push comes to shove, they know how to step up and show what they're made of. However, they're physically nerfed when laying eggs due to their large ovipositor, rendering them immobile during that period. Meanwhile, their higher intelligence allows them to boast more wrath and vengefulness than other Xenomorphs. The jaws have razor-sharp teeth in innumerable numbers, and the entire inner jaw is the size of a human head. The Queen's carapace, which I previously compared to leather, can hide her face almost like a turtle shell. It also gives the Queen incredible sensory abilities, allowing her to detect biochemical, thermal, and bioelectric signals. Her sharp, whip-like tail, combined with her maternal aggression, makes her one of the most terrifying creature designs in modern media. The Predalien, Alien vs. Predator Requiem 2007. Let me close out the Xenomorph entries with the final one, the amalgamation of a Xenomorph and a Predator from Alien vs. Predator Requiem. This hybrid is created when a facehugger implants its embryo not in a human, but in a predator. It has a more brownish coloration, unlike the standard pitch-black appearance we associate with Xenomorphs. They also possess the dreadlock-like appendages and the iconic mandibular jaws of their host, giving them a completely different look. The two species have come into contact with one another often, specifically due to predators considering Xenomorphs to be hard meat. As the aliens were considered to be incredibly dangerous, the predators revered them as highly worthy prey. Known as the Predalien, it was born after a facehugger implanted itself onto Scar during Scar's hunt. What formed as a result terrorized an entire town. Apart from its distinct coloration and mandible, it possessed a multi-spiked tail which was also thicker and longer than those of human-spawned Xenomorphs. The dome on the head was more transparent. Each Predalien was destined to mature into a queen, and overall was stronger than both traditional aliens and predators. It was ultimately killed by a nuclear bomb, as there was no other way out. I guess that explains its titanic strength and danger factor better than anything else. The Alien Creature, The Faculty, 1998. Now we go back to the 1998 film known as The Faculty. In this sci-fi horror, director Robert Rodriguez brings us face-to-face with what is referred to as the alien creature. Well, nothing too fancy in that name. But it induces paranoia from the get-go when high school students start suspecting that extraterrestrials are replacing their teachers. The students witness odd things, such as a new parasitic species on the football field. They spot their coach forcing one such parasite into the ear canal of the school nurse and find the body of a teacher. Needless to say, this alien creature, or creatures, infect human hosts and take control of them, once again absorbing them into a collective consciousness. You know, this seems to be a recurring theme with parasitic aliens. It eventually begins to take over students as well. But one of the students discovered that dehydrating the alien causes it to die, and he goes on to use this trick to make the others prove if they're infected or not. As expected, a mole is found who then destroys his supply and escapes. But when you're dealing with a parasite that creates a hive mind, you're dealing with a queen who can be killed to avert the entire crisis at once. The queen, when revealed, proves to be capable of going in and out of different forms, reverting to her human state from her alien state and back, while allowing us to see a grotesque creature just like we really wanted to. The parasite here has a goal, however. Since their own planet is dying, they must take over Earth for their continued survival. Overall, the creature is not unlike what we're used to, but what makes it stand apart and earns it a separate entry in this list is its goal. It actually has one. Crab Aliens, District 9, 2009. When you think of prawns, your mind jumps to the delicious river shrimps. You never really associate it with anything else, but District 9 makes the term a slur used for alien refugees who, despite being extraterrestrials, have a look akin to the earthy crustaceans we love to eat. They're also bottom feeders, in this case feeding on garbage while confined within their abusive settlements. But this also means that they are not the antagonists. They're just making it onto this list because of their mutation and status as a highly unsettling alien. So District 9 is a 2009 sci-fi action film by Neil Blomkamp and is generally presented as a mockumentary. The aliens arrive over Johannesburg in 1982, while the main story takes place 28 years later, bringing forth a horde of malnourished, crustacean-like aliens who are seeking asylum. They were settled by the government in the titular District 9 and went on to be derogatorily referred to as prawns. The film explores its angle of an interspecies rift in the form of humans versus prawns. As you can tell, the premise mimics the events of District 6 in Cape Town from the days of apartheid. These aliens originally possess superior spaceship engineering and advanced technology. They're carnivores and eat their food raw. They also enjoy cat food, which has the same effect on them as catnip for cats. But humans sell them food at appreciated prices, even when they offer their advanced weapons and tech in return, prompting the prawns to resort to rummaging through garbage for the sake of finding edible food. But they do enjoy the occasional rubber, as seen with their penchant for car tires. They're much taller than humans, however, and possess facial tendrils, bipedal locomotion, and shell-like skin. They are physically far stronger than humans, as well as using their tendrils to feed since they're toothless. While they can comprehend human languages, they cannot speak them. Each prawn possesses both male and female reproductive organs and can reproduce asexually, allowing their population to increase rapidly. But their overall lifestyle has led to much discrimination meted out towards them from humans, which is the premise the film actually primarily centers itself around. 14. The Critters, Krites. Critters, 1986. Here we have the Critters, or Krites, from the 1986 film of the same name. It's Stephen Herrick's directorial debut and follows small, furry aliens who escape from two shape-shifting bounty hunters and find themselves in a small town after escaping alien prison. Luckily for them, they are ravenous carnivores, and the town's inhabited. These very odd-looking aliens eat almost anything, breed fast, move fast, shoot poisonous quills, and have extremely sharp teeth. They start off their feeding journey on Earth with the cows, and then move on to a police officer, which gives them a taste for man-eating. Not like they care about flavor too much. They spoil the party for a couple by killing the boyfriend, causing large-scale panic among the people while the bounty hunters reach the town to get a hold of them. I wouldn't use this to discriminate against all critters, however, as these are clearly escapees from alien prison. But they are dangerous nonetheless, both in action and appearance. And they do deserve a spot on this list. Arachnids, Starship Troopers, 1997. We wrap up the list with another entry from Starship Troopers. Having already discussed the brain bug, we've left a space for the workers and warriors, bringing us to the Arachnids, who are different from the brain bug, as the brain bug is simply the nervous system. The Arachnids, however, are the hostile species who do the groundwork. They disperse their spores into space, form underground colonies, and expand in numbers. However, their abilities are mostly physical, not psychic, like that of the brain bug. While there are denominations within them, such as that of the sentinel bug that acts as a support unit, and the tiger spit that has hard armor and can spit venom, the three broad classifications would be the worker bugs, the warrior bugs, and the tanker bugs. As the name suggests, the workers do essential labor, such as creating tunnels and laying the blueprint for the colonies. They rarely fight and tend to flee when faced with violence, but they look very similar to the warrior bugs, which serve as the basic infantry of the Arachnids. They have sharp pincers, while their mandibles can crush rocks, metals, you name it. The side mandibles can operate as swords. They attack in large numbers and can crawl and climb over things. Despite their tough exoskeleton, they are not indestructible. Then, the tanker bug. With incredible armor, strength, and size, it can pulverize anything in its path. It's the Hulk of the Arachnids in a way. However, great size comes with reduced speed, which ultimately becomes the tanker's downfall. Overall, this foe is the worst possible nightmare for someone who hates insects. If this is what aliens are really like, then maybe we're better off not knowing if life exists outside Earth, right? Well, I am still intrigued though. Bring it on. That being said, if I had to choose my alien of choice, it would be the smooth-headed Xenomorph with the elongated egg-like skull. I have no deep reason for it. I just love the design of the head. It throws me off. And with that, this video comes to an end. Hope you enjoyed going through my list. Do share your comments and subscribe to the channel. Till next time, have a great day.